Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Meg Sullivan, where I review, preview, and analyze all sorts of video games to help you decide if these games are right for you. Today I'll be reviewing the PlayStation 5 version of Dragon Quest III HD-2D by Square Enix. I'll be talking about the graphics, sound, user interface, battle mechanics, story, and whatever else I talk about. At any rate, if you find this review helpful or at least enjoyable, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. It helps me know what you guys are interested in. Thank you. So for this review, I'm going to cover different features of the game and then let you know if I think Dragon Quest III is a purchase or a pass. And the reason I'm approaching it this way is because it's all going to come down to your time, patience, and skill set. There's a lot to enjoy about Dragon Quest III, but I have to warn you that even with massive quality of life improvements, it's still built over the bones of a much older game. And that becomes a little bit of a problem, at least for me, over time. But please, before you get angry or happy in the comments, let me explain. Now normally I would start with the story, but, well, there is no story. This is, after all, a nearly 30-year-old game, and classic games didn't have a lot of room to tell a story, and that's okay. You know what you need to know. And all you know is that you are the child of a popular hero named Ortega, who years ago was sent on a dangerous secret mission to defeat an archdemon, but failed. And somehow it's up to you, a teenager with little to no battle experience and 3 total randos, to succeed where your heroic father failed. And that's kind of the entire story. Now, granted, there are smaller story beats along the hero's journey that legit made me gasp. Dragon Quest III can get surprisingly dark, and I really appreciate that. But even with that said, the overall story is pretty forgettable. But again, that's okay because it is an old game and Square Enix didn't want to mess with a classic. So let's move on. And I want to move on to something positive, which is the visual fidelity of the game. The HD-2D art looks absolutely gorgeous. I love how foregrounds and backgrounds blend beautifully together to add depth to the world. I love the shading and lighting. The sprites for allies, enemies, and NPCs are wonderfully detailed, yet still have that Akira Toriyama look to them. And even the interior decorating and houses and castles look fantastic. The unobtrusive UI is also visually solid. I mean, it's not exciting, but thanks to the clear, if small font, it's easy to read, plus the menus are easy to navigate, and that's really all I need. Another improvement is the sound design. All the classic Dragon Quest beeps and boops and melodies are here, and they're fuller and richer for it, especially the soundtrack, which is fully orchestrated and sounds absolutely amazing. Now you might think some of these tunes are recycled from games like Dragon Quest XI or 8, but in fact those games borrowed tunes from previous Dragon Quest games, including Dragon Quest III, so they're not recycled. Speaking of sound, I was pleasantly surprised to find that there is voice acting in this HD 2D remaster. Admittedly, it's limited to characters involved in the main quests, so you're not going to be hearing a whole lot of voice acting, but overall it's still pretty great. The only downside is because the world of Dragon Quest encompasses multiple cultures, you may hear a cringy accent or 3, so just be prepared. Speaking of a culturally diverse world, that brings me to the next big positive for Dragon Quest III HD-2D, which is exploration. You guys, the map is huge, and since it's a quasi-open world, you can take the adventure in almost any direction you want. Only geographical features and some brutally hard enemies will stop you. I loved exploring in this game. Towns and terrain are beautiful and diverse, and I also love how there are different secret places packed with treasure scattered throughout the different continents. And even on the overworld map, sparkly objects are a visual cue that there's free loot just waiting for you to pluck off the ground and put in your inventory. This game wants you to go off the beaten path. You can walk, sail, or fly just about anywhere, well, eventually, and it rewards you for exploring that distant tower or town in the distance. And don't worry, if you find you've gone too far off the trail, you can use spells and items to return to any town or location you've already visited. But you know what's really great about exploration? You won't be doing it alone, and that brings us to party customization, which is surprisingly deep. You, the hero, will have a chance to decide who accompanies you on your perilous journey. You can choose up to 3 party members, and what's great is you get to decide what they look like, what they sound like, and what their vocation is, either a warrior, a mage, a priest, a thief, a gadabout, a sage, a merchant, a monster wrangler, or a martial artist. Well, that's pretty impressive. But what makes Dragon Quest III unique is you'll also get to decide a character's personality, including the hero's personality, which I should warn you is determined by a pop quiz at the start of the game. A unit's personality will affect the growth of certain attributes, aka stats, so it's important to pay attention to a character's personality and make sure their personality is compatible with their vocation. Now, unfortunately, the game does a poor job of explaining this mechanic, and since there are nearly 50 personalities to choose from, this feature can get confusing and overwhelming. Luckily, you can give allies an attitude adjustment by reading a book or equipping a specific type of accessory. Although watch out for cursed items. If you're cursed, dead, or poisoned, go to church. Now, let it be known you can swap out party members between missions in the starting town at any time, but keep in mind that it helps to patiently level your party up together, because once your allies reach level 20, they can change their vocation. Now, the bad news is that the character has to go back to vocation level 1 when learning something new, but the good news is they'll keep all the abilities and spells they've previously mastered, allowing you to slowly build up a very diverse and powerful team. Yes, your warrior can cast a healing spell or a devastating wind spell if they've been trying out different careers, and that makes gameplay fun and interesting. It also ensures your party is pretty balanced, and you're going to need a balanced party because did I mention this game is hard? Well, it is, like brutally hard. Now granted, this shouldn't come as a surprise. All classic turn-based RPGs are very tough, but even if you go into this experience eyes wide open, just know that Dragon Quest III is not for the faint of heart. While some enemies have clear weaknesses and some drop like a hat, others will hit you repeatedly like a ton of bricks. And more often than not, you will be dealing with a wall of enemies who repeatedly hit you like a ton of bricks. We're talking 2, even 3 times in a row. This may cause you to die repeatedly and force you to trudge all the way back to town to revitalize your party members because healing spells and healing items are rare or don't always work. Now granted, with enough patience, persistence, and enough coin to pay for very expensive armor and weapons, be sure to have a merchant or 2 on hand if you really need money fast, the edge will come off a little bit. But you know what? At the end of the day, if you want to survive, you will grind. This is a very grindy game, and you need to prepare yourself for that because you will run into a dungeon full of butt-kickingly hard monsters. Happily, however, there are some quality of life improvements that help with the battle grind. One is that you can speed up battles to get through them much faster, so that's a plus, thank you Square Enix. Better yet, you have a number of presets you can apply to characters so that they behave the way you want them to in battle without having to constantly stop and direct them manually. So if you want your healer to constantly heal, you can just tell them to focus on healing. If you want your tank to show no mercy, you can order them to do just that. If you want a more balanced approach, there's also that option. And if you find that your presets just aren't working, you can change things up when your turn comes back around in battle. This is a much more efficient yet strategic way of keeping the action going, and I really like that. And hey, even if that's too hard, don't worry, you can swack the difficulty down to easy mode, and there's no shame in that. Although keep in mind this doesn't make random encounters less frequent or enemies weaker, but it does mean you're basically impervious to death, so you're not in danger of losing progress if you run up against a super hard foe. Of course, this isn't as satisfying as winning a fight by applying strategy or building up your party, but easy mode will save your sanity. And you can always go harder if you're feeling more confident. Plus, you can always try running away, although that doesn't always work either. Anyway, this is the part where I owe my audience the truth. I keep wanting to score cool points by telling you I love this game unconditionally and I love the grind, but that would be a lie. You see, I thought I could hang with this game, but I can't and I couldn't. The grind really got to me. It robbed me of time, it wore me down, and it didn't help that the back half of the game is a series of endless fetch quests. And these quests are as far from each other as possible, which wouldn't be too bad, but remember the map is huge, and even when you double time it on your ship or on foot or even in flight, it takes forever to get anywhere new. It's a colossal time sink, and when the game decided to bait and switch me for a second or maybe third time when I was trying to get to the final boss tower, I basically just quit. And that's why I hesitate to recommend this game to all RPG lovers. I really wanted to hang with the grind, but I just couldn't. Now, having said that, I think if you grew up with classic RPGs, have a ton of patience, and enjoy a challenge, then you're going to love Dragon Quest III HD-2D, especially with all the quality of life improvements. But if you're like me and you don't have a ton of time to dedicate to a single game, if you're not patient, or if you play games mostly for story and characters, I wouldn't run out and buy this game right away. I would wait for it to be half off or something like that. Because it's a great game, but ultimately Square Enix didn't balance out the random encounters or make travel fast enough, which weighs the gameplay down, especially in the second half. Still, ultimately, it's up to you. But I would seriously factor in your time, patience, and overall skills before committing to Dragon Quest III. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you later.